I was reflecting today on a meeting I'm about to go into, and the meeting is with some community members sharing some information about students who are feeling marginalized in schools. But it made me start to think back to an incident that I had in middle school, which also kind of reminded me of a conversation I recently had with someone this week, which is this. So my parents were they were always outspoken in things, particularly my father. My father he would have been marching in places if he was in this country during the time of civil rights. Like, he would have been marching. He advocated for anybody who was treated unfairly. And in particular, I grew up going to marches particularly for my family that were all about the oppression of Muslims around the world. So the first of which started with marches on Palestine. And I was proudly going to DC in Lafayette Square and holding my signs up and saying the chants that my brother and my father and all these community members would lead for us to say all about the oppression of Palestinians in Israel. And as a seventh grader, I loved being a part of something that was beyond me. I loved being part of something that was important. And I knew Palestinians who had been kicked out of their homes. I knew Palestinians in our community who had family that were being persecuted. And I knew that all they ever had to fight back with at that time in the 80s and 90s was rocks. So that led me to be an advocate as a middle school kid. And I remember being in my 7th grade class, and on my binder, those like lovely little binders, right? I had a sticker that clearly said "Free Palestine" with a Palestinian flag on it. I went to school in an affluent, very white, very Jewish community. My neighbors were Jewish. They were very close friends of ours, and they still are to this day. And I had great relationships with a lot of people who were Jewish, but at that particular moment in time, there were 2 girls, twins, who were Jewish, and we went to middle school together. And that sticker incited so much vitriol towards me from these 2 girls, and then not just those 2 girls, because those 2 girls in a very white Jewish community school had a whole lot of other friends who also disagreed with my sticker. And I became ostracized because of a political thought that I had, not even really knowing what that was and the implications of what that meant for others. And simply just because I believed in something to the extent that I could at a 7th grader with the knowledge that I had. So my 2-part to this is that I think there's a lot of parents who really, with all their fervor and excitement, want to involve their children in these revolutionary acts, in these social justice movements, but they don't always give them the tools to be able to speak to those movements, to understand the implications for all involved, and to have the language to be able to not just defend, but dialogue with others about what they believe in and why what they believe can be different than what someone else believes. And it's neither right or wrong, it's just different beliefs. My parents didn't give me those tools. So what I ended up having was to step back and say, well, I'm never going to put anything having to do with Islam or Muslims or anything in any of my spaces. I have to deny these pieces of my belief systems and values. I have to deny those parts of myself in order to fit in this community and this school, because the majority of this school believes something different than me. And how often do our kids do that? they sacrifice themselves, they sacrifice their belief systems, or the other end of it, they don't have the tools to dialogue with others, and they end up getting in trouble because they are triggered in a very emotional, personal place, in something that is really deeply entrenched in the culture of who they are, in their family values, in their communities, in their personal experiences of stories and narratives. And we do a disservice to our kids. So I am trying to raise very conscious children, but I'm not just giving them slogans. I'm not just telling them a few pieces here and there and throwing out the news in front of them. We're having deeper conversations on humanity. We're talking about, well, what do you say when someone says this to you? And that's what we have to do for our children, because no one should have to sacrifice who they are just to exist in the schools that they're in, or the workplaces, or in the friendship groups that they're in. Although, be it, what I did realize is how to vet and eliminate people who are not true friends. Because in the end, the truth of the matter is, my 7th grade political understanding at the level that it was should not have been a reason to have been ostracized by these 2 friends and the crew of Jewish girls that they knew. So, there's my story time. Do with it what you will. Happy Tuesday.